Welcome to BeProvided Conservation Radio, sharing stories and information about the environment, wildlife, and the people who are dedicating their lives to protect the world for future generations. These inspirational stories will take you from the Santa Cruz Mountains to remote areas of Africa.
Hello everyone, welcome back to BeProvided Conservation Radio. This is your host, Marcia Sivek. In today's episode, I speak via telephone with Lisa Owens Viani, co-founder of Raptors Are the Solution, or in short, rats. We discuss the topic of rodenticides or rat poison that seems to me to be the DDT of our times. And it is very important, I think, for everyone to learn more about this topic because our wildlife is being greatly affected. Raptors such as owls, hawks, eagles, and carnivores such as bobcats, mountain lions, and even our own beloved pet cats and dogs are being affected. Research has even shown that rodenticides are finding their way into slugs, snakes, and even sea otters through runoff. And this is a really heavy topic and heavy subject because it seems like such a big feat to take on. But Lisa has done so and started a movement that is now moving across our country. And this is what keeps her going.
Every now and then when I do have moments of getting discouraged, I'll hear a barn owl overhead at night and I just realize that's who I'm working for.
And so before we get going today, I have this add-on information that Lisa just provided to me right when I was getting ready to publish today's episode. But in today's episode, we will be talking about an important assembly bill called AB 1788 that was created by Assemblyman Richard Bloom from Santa Monica, and it is sponsored by Rats. And just after this episode, Lisa let me know that there will be a sign-on letter and petition going to Governor Newsom of California to take action on this bill now. So to find out more about this petition coming up, please sign up for Rats e-newsletter at raptorsarethesolution@gmail.com or visit raptorsarethesolution.org. And also visit Raptors Are the Solution Facebook page. And this will allow you to learn more about what is happening with this bill and rodenticides, as well as take some action to help protect our wildlife. So now, on to today's show. Thank you. Thank you for joining us, Lisa, and welcome to the show.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. So anyways, before we get into some of the heavy details, I'm curious to know how you became involved with Raptors in general.
In general, I had actually worked as a wildlife rehabber years ago at Wild Care. It's a rehab facility in San Rafael. And one of my jobs, which I just treasured, was handling a red-tailed hawk there named Callie. And I would feed her. I would have her on my arm. My arm was in a glove, and I would feed her mice, and I was just in love with her. She was a wonderful bird. And so that was I suppose that was kind of where it first started. And then I live in Berkeley, California, and I would go out walking at night, and it didn't take me very long to realize that I was hearing barn owls. And so I realized that, we have these incredible animals even in cities, and I started a campaign to make the barn owl the city bird of Berkeley, which was like the least controversial thing the city has ever done. And just to create awareness about, these animals in our midst. And at the time, I was just trying to get people not to chop down their trees that they were nesting in. So that was kind of how I got interested and started. And then that ultimately led to broader concerns with Cooper's hawks in my neighborhood who were perishing from having ingested poison rodents.
Oh, yeah. So that's a story I heard. So I always wondered, well, how did your neighbors know to go to you for the birds? So that explains it.
I had actually been raising some orphaned barn owls in a box on the top of my house.
Oh my gosh!
I had federal and state permits to do this. They were young owls whose parents had died, and we suspected rodenticides. Mm-hmm. And so we were raising the owls in this box on the top of our house and feeding them, and then we did like a slow release of the owls. And it was all done with, great supervision by Fish and Wildlife, et cetera. But anyway, my neighbors all knew about it, and I told them what was happening, and they were all really interested. And then when my neighbor found the dead Cooper's hawk fledglings in his little kid's swimming pool, he knew that I knew about raptors, so he brought them over to my house.
Wow. And I believe you found that these poor little fledglings were poisoned, correct?
Yes, I took their bodies to WildCare. WildCare had them tested by the state, and they came back positive for several different anticoagulant rat poisons.
Wow, several different ones. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And I heard or read that they go to water because this poison makes them thirsty. Is that correct?
That's correct, because it causes them to bleed to death internally. It thins the blood and causes, internal hemorrhaging. And so, they're just trying to go to water to get some moisture and get hydrated again. It's a pretty awful way to die.
That is awful. And just as a side note, I talked to some neighbors down the road who were using, they said they were using rat poison, and I was like, no, that's not good. And they're like, oh, all it does is make the rat thirsty. And I'm like, no, of course I sent them a couple of my podcasts and your information, and they stopped using it. Thank goodness.
Oh, that's great.
I know. But I mean, that's how some of these things are being sold. Oh, it just makes the rat thirsty,
Yeah, there's been a lot of misinformation spread by the pest control industry. Unfortunately, a lot of them have told people that they tell people things like the rat goes into the poison bait box but never comes out, which is completely a lie.
Right.
They blatantly tell people that these products don't harm anything other than the rat, which is another just total lie, I'm sorry to say. It's really, really kind of unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, poison is poison. It really doesn't discriminate, I don't think.
No.
Or we know for sure it doesn't, yeah.
Definitely not anticoagulants. Yeah.
Right. So going back to these two Cooper hawks, is this what kind of motivated you to co-found Rats with, I believe your co-founder is Alan Fish?
Yes, his name is Alan Fish. He's the director of the Golden Gate Raptor Observatory. That's the organization that basically counts the raptors as they migrate through the Golden Gate every year. So they're collecting all the scientific data on raptors populations. And he and we knew each other. And when this started happening, I said to him, hey, this isn't good. If it's happening here, it's probably happening elsewhere, and we need to do something about it. And so we decided to form a nonprofit, and we got started in 2011, but then we became a project of Earth Island Institute in 2013. So they are our parent kind of umbrella organization now.
Oh, great. Yeah, I'm familiar with Earth Island Institute. Yeah, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the premise of rats in general, or, raptors are the solution?
Well, the premise is just that we need to let these animals do what they do in the ecosystem. So one red-shouldered hawk can consume 30 rodents a month. And every time we wipe one out with rat poison, we're destroying part of the best solution for controlling, pests and rodents in a toxic-free way.
Right.
So the idea behind Raptors are the solution was never to say, oh, we don't need to do anything else, but more to say, let's let these animals do their job. And then, of course, there are other methods of working on rodent control that are not toxic and don't infiltrate the ecosystem. So nobody wants rats in their house. I don't. And it's, there are other ways to control them besides using poison. And in the meantime, we need to let these incredible birds of prey and other wildlife predators do what they do. That's their role in the ecosystem. So that was the idea behind the name.
That's great. Yeah, and I think I heard in a previous interview with you on a radio station that you mentioned barn owls and I think it was barn owls and how much a family can eat
Yes, in
or how many
one
rats?
breeding,
Yeah.
yeah, in one breeding season alone, a family of barn owls can consume as many as 3,000 rodents. So barn owls are just incredible mouse killing machines, is kind of what we call them. They're
Yeah.
incredible. Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah. I mean, if everybody here in the Santa Cruz Mountains did that, we wouldn't have any rat problem whatsoever.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, that'd be perfect. So that's crazy. So you mentioned some other methods, and what are some of these other methods that can help control rat
Well,
populations without poison?
yeah, first of all, there's always, I mean, the first thing we tell people, if rats are getting into your house, you need to figure out how and where and why.
Yeah.
Um, so they can get in tiny, tiny, tiny little holes, like less than the diameter of a quarter. And then once you find how they're getting in, basically you have to, well, in our case, we had one that got in through a tiny pipe and then was living in the wall, and so we had to set a trap under the house in the crawl space to get it. And then once we did that, we then put up hardware cloth around the hole and did exclusion, and that's really what you need to do. Putting, if you're going to use poison, the rat's going to die in your wall, and it'll leave a horrible smell and cause, fly epidemic and all of that. So
Right.
just never and worse yet, the rat can get back outside and then, end up getting eaten by something, including, yes, as you pointed out earlier, like a pet cat or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's that method. I mean, that's the first, strategy, and there are things you can do, kind of pruning trees and branches away from your house so that rats don't, end up on the roof and fall through a pipe, which is what happened at my house. Keeping, vegetation away, not feeding pets outside, cleaning up bird seed. Chicken coops are a big problem. Rats love to burrow under the coops and basically live there. And so I had a rat terrier company recommend to me that chicken coops should be elevated by 1.5 feet off the ground so that there's not a way for rats to burrow and live underneath them.
Oh.
But a lot of it's just, rats are coming to your yard for food and water like any other animal. So a lot of it is just kind of doing away with those sources that are attracting them. Mm-hmm. They love ivy. They love, thick mats of ivy. So it's good to remove ivy, which is an invasive plant anyway.
Right.
Just kind of look for places that are harboring them and clean those areas up. Compost bins are another place that rats like. They like to burrow under the compost bins, so just to be aware of that. And then there are other methods that can be used. There's dry ice, which can be used, put down rat burrows, and a lot of these methods are controversial. A lot of groups don't agree with even using these things. So I'm talking from the perspective of if you have a serious problem and you absolutely must do something, there are, things like dry ice that can be used, and the trails and the burrows have to be sealed off completely so that the rats can't get out if you're going to use that method. And I'm not promoting it. I'm just saying that that's something that can be used that's less toxic to the whole ecosystem than anticoagulant rat poisons. And then there are products like rat zappers, which are electronic things that basically zap or electrocute the rat, and then there are old-fashioned snap traps. But all of those things have to use with great care and only in places where other animals can't get into them.
Yeah.
That's always something we've seen. Songbirds get caught in traps when people use them out in the open, along with other animals. Another new product that's recently been approved in California, although right now only professionals can use it. It's called Pest, and it's made by a company called Sinestech. And what it is, and I think this is maybe the best solution that is out there right now, it's a product that reduces rat fertility. It is not a hormone, it doesn't bioaccumulate, and it's not a poison. It basically just slows down rat reproduction in both male and female rats.
Wow.
And it just makes them less fertile because rats are extremely fertile and reproduce really quickly. And this basically just knocks back that level of reproduction. And they've been using it successfully in a lot of trial runs in cities and subways and other areas where they can kind of do controlled experiments. So it's been approved in California. It's being tested out various different places with good results so far, and I'm kind of hopeful for that solution because it doesn't involve the risk of trapping and all of the things that go along with that, but it just would knock back the incredible reproduction of rats.
Wow, yeah, that's amazing. So is this something that you can go to a pesticide company and recommend at this time, or instead of poison?
I think that there are only certain companies that have started using it, and I'm not sure which ones, but I could find out for you. Hopefully they're trying to get it approved for consumer use so that people could actually buy it over the counter. I don't think that's happened yet, but I know that they're working on that.
Yeah, that would be great. And I think this is a all-women company, right?
It's a woman-owned company. It's the female scientist designed the product after she was studying menopause, effects of menopause in women, and she was doing some tests on mice. And what I will say about her is that she is very concerned about the welfare of the animals that she does the tests on. She's a very humane person, and so this product kind of came about as a result of her worrying about, the impacts of poison on the ecosystem, and also it came about, with her scientific research on the impacts of menopause. So it was kind of something that just sort of came together sort of serendipitously for her. And so, yeah, I think
that's interesting.
It's a great idea, yeah.
Yeah, good, yeah. And just on another side note, or, I'm not sure if this is much of a concern, but we have the endangered dusky-footed woodrat that is already low in reproduction rates, right?
Yeah, and I've asked them about that. They have not done any testing on the woodrat, and so what I would say is that this product probably shouldn't be used anywhere near areas where that animal is, because they don't know yet if it could have an impact on the woodrat, and we certainly don't want to decrease reproduction in that species.
Right.
So it too would have to be used with care, only in areas where there aren't concerns like that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, and I think I did another interview with Rebecca Dimitrick, and she mentioned that wood rats don't tend to be the ones that get into our homes as much. Is that correct? Is that how you feel too? Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah. So having a professional come out and kind of assess that situation would be a good idea. So
exactly.
Yeah, that's good. So, it's really scary, I think, out there. And I don't know if I'm just prone to seeing all this bad news with, bobcats and mountain lions and stuff. But, I think I read some studies from the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and I think the National Park Service was involved with the University of California. And the result was that 80 to 90% of predators like mountain lion and bobcat and raptors have been exposed to more than one second generation anticoagulant, and that's just scary.
Yeah, that sounds about right. But also the bobcats and mountain lions, some of these mammalian predators are being also exposed to first generation anticoagulants. So those are a problem as well. And those are the ones that there's a researcher named Laurel Sirius who's with UC Santa Cruz and UCLA, and she has found a link between first-generation anticoagulants in the bloodstream and immune system impacts, which is the reason that mange is becoming such a problem. So she's made a correlation between those things, and I think her research is really groundbreaking.
Wow. Okay. So can you explain the difference between first and second generation then of the rat poison?
Yeah. So second generation they're designed to kill a rodent in one feeding. So it's kind of like this huge toxic dose, like all in one. And if you think about it, any animal that eats that is going to be a little toxic time bomb just running around waiting for something else to get it.
Yeah.
So it's a very toxic load. And when those get into a predator, they bioaccumulate and they end up in the animal's liver when they do the test. They're very long-lived, so they always find them in the livers of these animals that have been poisoned. First generation clear through the system faster. you have to use more of them to kill the rodents. But what happens when they get in an animal's bloodstream, especially like a bobcat or a mountain lion, there's like a huge pulse of these poisons in the bloodstream, and from the best I can understand it, and the researchers think that it's that kind of huge pulse in the bloodstream that's leading to immune system suppression, which in turn can lead to things like mange, which is a skin parasite. If your immune system's depressed, you're going to be much more vulnerable to something like a parasite that normally you could fight off. And when you're weakened by a huge load of anticoagulants in your bloodstream, you're not going to be able to do that as effectively. So that's basically the link.
Wow. And you're saying that she's linking this to the first generation stuff, the mange,
Yeah.
like, wow.
Yeah, they're linked to both, but she's particularly concerned about first gen because that's the one that she's been doing studies on animals in the field. So she's gone out and taken samples of living animals in the field and found these huge loads of first gen and sometimes mixed with second gen. But, the other scientists that have looked at this issue have only done laboratory tests, and there's a big difference between like testing an animal in the laboratory and testing it out in the field. Mm-hmm. And that's why I think her studies are so strong, because she's actually out there looking at the immediate impacts of this stuff on a living animal.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. I didn't realize that. And is warfarin, am I saying it right? Is that first generation or second gen?
That's a first generation. The first generation are difascinone, chlorofascinone, and warfarin. And the one that's come up repeatedly in her testing is primarily difascinone. They're all bad, but that's the one that is, for whatever reason, it's being used more often, and that's the one that's really showing up in these tests. So we actually have a lawsuit right now that we filed against the California Department of Pesticide Regulation, where we're asking them to reevaluate both second generation and first generation anticoagulants. And due to these impacts on non-target wildlife, we believe that they need to fully analyze all of the effects that these products are having under the California Environmental Quality Act. And they've agreed to reevaluate second gen, but not yet first gen. So our lawsuit is proceeding.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I was going to ask you about your lawsuit. So interesting. So what was it? Was it second generation that was taken off or the shelves in 2014?
Yes, that's correct. So the state of California removed second generation from consumer shelves in 2014, and then the U.S. EPA removed them from consumer shelves throughout the country in 2015. And this was due to all of the huge amount of evidence showing that there's a huge problem with these products bioaccumulating and going up the food chain, just like DDT did, as you mentioned. But unfortunately, there was a huge loophole in the law that we commented on at the time, which allowed the professional pest control companies to keep using these products. And their argument was, well, we use these products so carefully so they don't cause a problem. It's the consumers that are misusing them and causing the problem. And of course, that's ridiculous, because it's the poison that's the problem, not who uses it. And so the problem is continuing. There's been no decrease in wildlife poisoning since the consumer poll, which pretty clearly speaks to, again, the point that it's the poison, not the user.
Yeah, it almost seems like it's gotten worse, or my awareness of it is more tuned in. But yeah, so we can still buy first generation though, right, as consumers?
Yes, that's correct.
That's scary. Okay. Yeah, that's really scary. I know, it's crazy. Like, I go to a grocery store, and you see around one little store, like 6 black boxes, and it's rat poison. It's like, what are they trying? Why do they need that many? They don't need any at all. But what, why 6?
It's
crazy.
Complete overkill. It's complete. And often what you'll find is like a combination of both first and second generation anticoagulants with something like bromethalin, which is a nerve toxin, thrown in for good measure. So it's complete and utter overkill. It's just ridiculous.
It is. That's scary. So I also, want to talk to you a little bit more about the legislature that's going through and the status of that. And I know we've been conversing privately, but let people, become more aware of the the bill that was introduced by, I believe, Richard Bloom, a Democrat from Santa Monica.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
It's AB 1788. It's a bill that would try to crack down on this loophole with the professional operators. And, of course, you can imagine the amount of pushback that has been occurring from the industry.
Yeah.
Yeah, it basically would close that loophole and also add some further restrictions on first-generation anticoagulants. And so the bill was introduced this year. It's made its way through all of the committees. It needed to go through multiple committees, probably like 6.
Wow.
And then it reached the Senate Appropriations Committee, and the bill author was suddenly notified that various state agencies were concerned about how the bill would be enforced. So rather than letting the bill just be killed in the Senate Appropriations Committee, he parked the bill, and we are trying to work with these state agencies to address their concerns, which I personally feel are a red herring. I don't think there's any enforcement or very little enforcement that's going on now, and so I don't understand. I feel that these concerns about enforcement are really over-exaggerated. So we'll see what happens. It was very disappointing to have it stalled out like that, but it's not dead. We'll be going forward again next year, and I'll be keeping people updated as we go.
That's great that you're doing this. Not great that it was tabled, but yeah, I was wondering what you meant. I know when we were talking privately, you mentioned it was tabled for 2 years or something like that.
No, just until next year. So it's basically
okay.
Bills are either 1-year bills or 2-year, and it's become a 2-year bill.
Oh, I gotcha.
So there's supposed to be a process where we're going to be working with the agencies to address their concerns, but as you can imagine, everything in Sacramento right now until the end of September is a bit crazy with the governor trying to sign all these bills that are coming across his desk. So we don't expect to hear from anyone until next month. But at that point, we've made some suggestions about language and enforcement. We think that you could fund enforcement by putting a fee on any users that are exempted, which there are. There are some exemptions in the bill, and so we've made that proposal, and we'll see where it goes from there. But I'm really hoping that this issue can be fixed, especially since Governor Newsom had made rodenticides one of his campaign issues.
Right.
So we are counting on him to follow through and hoping that he will do so because he's in charge of these state agencies who have raised concerns.
Yeah. Wow, I hope so too. And so what can people do to help all this along?
Well, right now, I'll definitely be sending out some action alerts as we go forward.
Good.
I don't have a specific request of anyone at the moment, but I would say, just check out our website, check out our Facebook page, sign up for our newsletter, and our newsletter is the way we get out information about action alerts, also on our Facebook page. And so just kind of follow us, and we'll definitely be keeping people updated and certainly be asking for the public's help as the bill moves forward. We have an email, raptorsarethesolution@gmail.com. People can always email us there, and I'd be happy to provide more information. That's raptorsarethesolution@gmail.com.
Okay, great. And I will, if it's okay, I can put all these links into the show notes, and that way people can hopefully share it, as well. And
yes, that'd be great.
In touch. Yeah, that's great. Just one more question about the bill, though. I think I read that there is a loophole that agriculture may not be affected by this as well.
Yes, it's a very unfortunate loophole, and it's one that, we've tried legislation now. This is our 5th year making this effort. And since the very first year, we were told, do not try to include agriculture in this bill or it will not make it out of the first committee. And that's the reality of politics in California. So what I'd like to say about that is that we're not giving up on agriculture, and some of our, if we can't address them in the legislation, then we're going to really ramp up our efforts in terms of public education and outreach, like through our billboards and other kinds of ads that we've been taking out, kind of targeting more agricultural agricultural areas, and we also have even a new chapter of rats in the Central Valley. So there are other ways that we hope to try to influence the use of these products in agriculture, and our lawsuit actually will have an impact on that as well, because the first generation anticoagulants, especially difasinan, are heavily used in agricultural areas. So we can force the state to reevaluate those products. That will be helpful. So that, we have a multi-pronged strategy here. So,
that's great. Yeah. I mean, with politics, you need, different avenues and prongs to go at it. So, yeah, wow, thank you. Yeah, and you're going to all these meetings yourself and participating in most of them, I believe, aren't you?
Yeah, that's correct. I spent a lot of time in Sacramento this summer.
Yeah, that can't be easy. Yeah, that's amazing. And we're getting close to out of time, but is there anything else that you feel we should know about and what we can do about things?
I guess I just feel like I want to make it clear that people have a choice to not use products that will harm wildlife, and I think most people don't want to harm wildlife, and so just to avoid using poisons altogether, always read the labels of everything. We have a page on our website that lists the different poisons and also multiple scientific studies about their impact. So if you're interested, you can check that out. And just remember that, we're so lucky to have these animals in our midst sharing this planet with us. So just to always keep that in mind and appreciate, kind of what they do for us as well as their incredible beauty.
I agree. And what do you feel like for me, I've gone to a couple stores and I've actually confronted the owners, and they're pretty receptive, to ask them, if you see rat poison bait boxes. I've gone to one of my coffee shops in Santa Cruz and, I was like, hey, there's some nesting owls just down the street from here. And he was very willing to look into it. I'm not sure. I haven't been back to see if he actually took them away. I've been afraid. But
yeah, I think that's always good. I think the more people call it out and the more people ask for, businesses to use alternatives. We have a long list on our website of businesses, including in Santa Cruz, that have switched from poison to different methods. It's really impressive what some have done. So it can be done, and I think local grassroots action is really the best, always the best.
Yeah, definitely. Well, good. So on that note, I know it's such a heavy topic, or at least it is for me. I find myself thinking about this topic a lot, and so I'm so glad that we got the opportunity to talk. But, it sounds like grassroots campaigning may give you hope, but is there anything that gives you hope that you're seeing with the work that you're doing? Or that can give us hope?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that since I started this effort in 2011, I kind of felt like a lone voice in the wilderness, really, honestly. And since then, we've built an incredible coalition of groups and organizations that are working together on this issue. We just had so many letters flood the legislature. We have so many groups now spreading this message that it's really heartening. So I think, it's not just me anymore. I think I kind of started a movement. I sort of
that's great.
With the match, but now it's really rewarding, and it's spreading across the country. It's not just California. We have people working on this in Washington, the state of Washington. We've got a really active guy in Massachusetts who's taken it on. South Carolina. People in Florida, New Mexico. So it's really been great to see people kind of, become aware of this issue and just, efforts on multiple levels happening.
And get involved, yeah. And maybe that's why I'm seeing more awareness around all of this as well. It's good. It's all really good. So, wow. Well, we all really appreciate all the work that you're doing and what you're doing for the raptors and animals and everything. So, and we'll, yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but we really appreciate you.
Oh, well, thanks so much. I appreciate that. And I guess it's always too, like, every now and then when I do have moments of getting discouraged, I'll hear a barn owl overhead at night, and I just realize, like, that's who I'm working for.
Thank you for listening to BeProvided Conservation Radio. Links and resources to today's topic are in our show notes on iTunes. We appreciate your dedication and interest in protecting our natural world for future generations. If you like what you heard, please get involved by volunteering, donating, and sharing these podcasts with your friends. It also helps us to inform more people if you take a minute to leave a rating or review on iTunes. Have a great day, and thank you for listening to BeProvided Conservation Radio.